Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. The election campaign is now well underway, and for the candidates, all eyes are firmly on May 21. But putting aside the politics of it all, the election itself is a massive logistical challenge. Thousands of polling places coordinating pre-poll and postal votes, transporting and counting votes, and doing it all in a COVID-safe environment. Then add in the role of social media, the amount of misinformation that's circulating, and the need to engage younger voters who may be doing it for the first time. Where do you start? Evan Ekin-Smyth is the Director of Media and Digital Engagement at the Australian Electoral Commission. Evan, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Oh, good day, and thank you for having me.
Nice job you've got.
Yeah, look, I do the easy part. I talk about how hard it is. Our organisation, though, does a heck of a lot of work. It is a significant logistical undertaking, one of the nation's largest peacetime logistical exercises. And as you mentioned, the COVID overlay makes it incredibly complex to run. So a difficult job, lots of materials, lots of people, lots of logistics, but hey, we're ready to go and we know how to do this.
Okay, so when did planning begin?
Oh, it's going to sound a little hokey, but the day after the writs were returned for the previous federal election in 2019, people often ask us, it's the barbecue question, what do you do in between elections? But it is such a massive...
What an insult, Evan, what an insult.
It can be, and I wish we were just sitting around. There's other things, not just election preparation, of course. We maintain the role on a regular basis. We run hundreds of industrial elections that people don't know about. We redraw our electoral boundaries, party registration. There's lots of things. But in terms of preparation for a federal election, it's massive. In fact, we've already got planning underway for 2025 just to make sure that we've got early processes in place for that election. So we start pretty early.
Okay. So give me an idea of the size of the challenge. How many people are enrolled to vote? How many polling places are there? I mean, how many people are working at the AEC to help it run smoothly?
Yeah, in terms of enrolment, 17.1 million people on the electoral roll at the moment. There's a few days to go until the close of rolls date, which is 8 p.m. local time on the Monday the 18th. So anybody who's listening, get on aec.gov.au.
Am I right in saying that there's about 500,000 people you think who need to enrol to vote that should be enrolled but just haven't, mostly because they've turned 18 in the last 3 years?
Yeah, that's correct. So 17.1 million represents, we estimate, 96.5% of the eligible population. Remarkable. By any international standard, it's a great base for democratic participation. But yeah, 500,000 people, it's still a lot of people who need to jump on. And a lot of them will be young, so 96% nationally. But if you break it down and you go to a youth cohort, 18 to 24-year-olds, it sits at around 85%. So there's a lot of young people who need to take action, and they typically do in this last week leading up to close of rolls.
I have 4 people in my household between 18 and 24. I'm going to get onto them today.
Please do. I'll follow up if you don't.
Good. How about polling places? How many of them are there?
Yeah, we've got about 8,000 of them around the country. Most of those will be on election day itself, but we've got just over 500 in the early voting period as well. So there's a lot of premises, and that's just our front of house where people vote. We've also got warehouse facilities across the country, and we do things like train our polling officials, do the pick and pack for the millions of materials that we distribute all across the nation, and we conduct counts at those centres as well. So there's a lot of premises that goes into it. In addition to a lot of staff, we actually become one of the nation's largest employers, albeit for a very short period of time, with around about 105,000 staff in total. So
basically you're able to access schools, public schools and things like that. Is that how that works? And then everyone else is a volunteer, having said that they get paid for it, but people put their name down to be part of the process on the day. Is that how it works?
Yeah, you do get paid. It's anywhere from a few $100s to a few thousand, depending on if you're just working for a single day or a little bit of a longer period, be it early voting or counting. Also, depending on your level of seniority, because we have people who run polling places and people who just work in them. In terms of the venues, yeah, a lot of them on election day are schools or community halls or church halls. Obviously, with the early voting period, we can't use those venues because, well, the kids are there. So we get what we can. And there's not a lot of facilities out there that meet the requirements for us in terms of security, enough space to set up a good polling place, particularly in COVID-19 setting. So we get what we can. I remember a few elections ago when video stores were going defunct, we used a lot of old video stores, for instance. But
Wow.
it's sort of shop fronts and things of that nature that are sitting there waiting for a lease. And while they're waiting for a long-term one, we jump in and get a short-term one.
Stay with me, Evan. We'll be back in a minute. My My guest this morning is Evan Ekin-Smyth, Director of Media and Digital Engagement at the Australian Electoral Commission. Okay, so I want to talk about COVID in a moment, but just quickly, pre-poll, postal votes, all that, when's that all start?
Yeah, well, postal votes, if people need it, their applications are open now and you can go to our website and apply. But it is an in-person community event, an election. We get together once every 3 years or so. You get your democracy sausage, you get to go in a polling place, experience the festival of democracy.
I reckon it's one of the best days of the year, of the 3 years. I really enjoy voting and it's my right to have my say. And you're right, you get your democracy sausage, but there's a really great feel, and particularly if it's a nice day, you actually get a real community feel.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's sort of unique to Australia in a way as well. I mean, you look at some elections overseas, you don't have options overseas for some places. You've literally got your name on a door at a particular day, a particular time, and if you don't go then, you don't get your vote. We've got a lot of options. You get down there and the barbecues are being manned by the local footy club or the Lions club. It really is that good feel. You bring your kids along. So we're really blessed in Australia to have that sort of atmosphere around elections, and long may it continue.
I wonder whether post-COVID, because my own community where I live, I certainly know the people in my community a lot better than I did a couple of years ago, because every morning I walk and during lockdowns we're all in the same boat. So I actually start saying hello to them. I wonder whether this, on May 21, it'll even be better than normal because people will know their local community better.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. And let's hope we're in a good COVID environment. We've still got about, 5.5 weeks until election day. Of course, who knows what that is doing at the time. But we will have a lot of COVID safety measures in place for people so they can feel comfortable coming down to vote. We're 2 years down, unfortunately, in the pandemic, but people are getting out and about for the most part and leading their daily lives, going to local shops. There'll be more safety measures in place at our polling places than you trip to the local shop. So you can feel comfortable to come on down.
Okay. The big question, though, is am I really going to get to know my community members better because I'll be standing in a line with them for half an hour, airport style? Or do you think it'll work out okay?
Maybe. It probably depends where you go and when you go. So, again, we're a little bit different with the access to voting services than a lot of people overseas. I mean, I see those queues. There was the Canadian election at the late stages of 2021, and there was a queue that stretched on for 8 hours or whatever it was. We won't see that. And our friends at Elections Canada do a pretty good job, but that was a pretty bad queue. We don't see that. We estimate that around 3/4 of Australians get through in 15 minutes or less. I mean, people loathe queuing and probably don't even tolerate 15 minutes, but we think that's pretty good. But you will get some queues, and COVID safety measures will, I suppose, contribute to those queues. You think about just ordering a coffee at a local cafe. If you are wearing a mask or the attendant's wearing a mask or both, that transaction can take a little longer because you need to clarify what's happening. Well, when we're marking you off the electoral roll, that's a bit more of a sophisticated transaction with a bit more to it. So it could slow things down.
Okay, so what about if people are isolating on the day? What's going to happen then? Because you get fined if you don't vote, of course.
Yeah, it is a compulsory system. The first message is election day. If you can make it there, great. That's what you should be doing. The first backup is the early voting period, and it is a 2-week early voting period. Starts from Monday, the 9th of May. So that's your first port of call if you can't make it on election day. And there might be people through that 2-week period who have to isolate. Most isolation requirements these days are 7 days. So it might be the case that if somebody needs to isolate during that voting period, they may have already voted, or they may get out of isolation to be able to vote in person afterwards. But there'll be some people who won't be able to make it in person at all. The first emergency measure, I suppose, is postal voting. And postal vote applications are open until the Wednesday prior to election day. So that's the first port of call if you can't make it to a polling place in person. Then that problem is narrowed down to the last 3 days, the Thursday, the Friday, and election day itself on the Saturday. If you haven't voted already, if you're COVID affected and you're mandated to isolate because you've contracted COVID, we'll have a telephone voting service available for you.
Okay, so that's official. You're definitely doing that?
Yeah, so the telephone voting service is something, there was legislation that passed in February, there were regulations written on top of that in March, and we're planning to do that. We've got thousands of operators that we're looking to set up to run that service. So there's a few details still to fine-tune, but that's something that we're planning on for that last little bit of the election period.
So what's a good election day look like for the AEC?
Happy voters, small queues, and this is going to sound a little bit funny, but when we get into election night, a wide margin, we don't care what side of politics wins, but a wide, clear margin is always the best thing because people get an early indication of who's going to form government, and it just makes for a smooth count. So if we can get all that, tick, 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 we'll be happy people.
So how does accounting go? So you're responsible for the accounting?
Yeah, absolutely. So election night, we'll count every single vote that's been cast that day. We'll count the vast majority of early votes that have been cast as well. Somewhere in the order, when you add up House of Representatives ballots and Senate ballots, it's going to be somewhere in the order of 22, 23 million ballot papers that we'll count on that night. So that's a significant task, of course. And then we move into Sunday, which is really a logistics day. End of Saturday night, we package everything up and we've got really secure arrangements around that. Point-to-point tracking of ballot papers and purpose-built storage containers and things of that ilk. Sunday, we're moving them to centralised count centres. We're getting the votes that have been cast over the other side of the country to come back. We're getting overseas votes to come back to Australia. We've got postal votes moving into AEC facilities. But we will start some small postal counts from the Sunday afternoon and then larger ones from the Monday onwards. So we kind of treat election day as the halfway mark here at the AEC. For most people, they think it's over, especially if they've gotten an indication of who's going to form government, but it really is the halfway mark for us.
Yeah, okay. Now, one thing that you've certainly embraced is social media. You do some great social media, or the AEC does, but presumably a lot of voters are engaging with traditional media too. Is the goal just right now to get people to get on to the electoral roll?
Yeah, that's primarily the goal. We want people to participate, of course. The electoral roll is in incredibly healthy shape, but we want more. And then we want people to turn out and know how to mark their ballot paper so it's a formal vote. That's the number one goal. But a really important thing is for people to trust the electoral system, to know how it works and to trust it. And we've seen, I suppose, a denigration of that in some jurisdictions overseas. More people talking about the electoral process, questioning it, sometimes with less than factual information. That's seeped in a little bit here in Australia. So we're working really hard. Our social media approach might look a bit of fun and frivolity at times, but there's a really serious edge to it. We want to protect our reputation because what people think of us as the electoral administrator who runs the election is intrinsically linked to their trust in election results. So it's a really purposeful approach. I do get my own hands on the keyboard every now and again, or my thumbs on the phone with that. And it is my team that does the social media channels for the AEC. And I think they do an incredibly good job in trying circumstances.
I do think it's beneficial that pretty much everyone around Australia, if I'm correct, Evan, votes in the same way. I mean, I've lived in the US at times when presidential votes have gone on, and because there are so many different systems, they're open to legal challenge so much more than Australia.
Indeed, and we get comparisons to the US all the time, unfortunately. But it's so different. There's so many differences that the comparisons aren't really useful because, as you said, multiple systems. Here in Australia, we've got the AEC, one electoral administrator running it consistently across the entire nation. They use first past the post. We use a preferential voting system. We're a compulsory system. They're a voluntary system. They elect their president directly. We do not. I could go on for so long. The differences are enormous. But sometimes I suppose we're consuming more media of international elections than ever before, and people are starting to raise questions. So we're being quite firm where we need to be, being funny where we need to be, and combating that misinformation. And one of the key ways we do that is our short-form videos that we produce here at the AEC with our YouTube channel, AEC TV. You'll see my face and those of my teams a little bit too often with some bad acting and some bad outtakes.
Don't be like that, Evan. Don't be like that.
Yeah, no, I think the measures get across, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Well, look, enjoy the next 5 weeks or so, and the 5 weeks after that too, it seems. The message, I suppose, to everyone out there is enrol. It's your right to vote, whoever you vote for. And so get on the poll and enjoy Election Day.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me on. Yeah, enrol. That's the message at the moment.
Thank you, Evan. That was Evan Ekin-Smyth, Director of Media and Digital Engagement at the Australian Electoral Commission. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.